Coach Robb podcast, answering questions and eliminating frustrations about health, wellness, and performance since 1987.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Coach Robb Podcast Network, another episode of Meet the Guests. This episode is presented to you by our friends at HBI Auto. I am so happy for our guest here today. If you follow me on social media, particularly on our racing Instagram handle, you see me talking about this young man, Mr. Tom Armstrong, and I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am to have this guy busy off the tour schedule and is carving out some time just to share some insights with our listeners. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
Hi, Rob. Yeah, I'm all good. Glad to be on the podcast.
Man, all joking aside, I really appreciate you carving out time for us. I want, for people who don't follow me on Instagram, who may not quite understand your background, I'm going to let you give the elevator pitch as to who Mr. Tom Armstrong is, so you can educate the listeners.
Oh, I have to describe myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to compete in the British Motocross Championship and was coached by yours truly, Coach Robb. And did multiple years competing at that level. Many crashes, that's for sure. And sort of retired from it in the end. To focus on a different path following music as I'm a drummer in a band.
And I'm going to, as you guys can tell already, Tom's not someone that likes to speak about himself, but when he says he was racing the GPs, yeah, he was racing at the highest level. I had the privilege of actually getting to be with Tom in person there in the UK and seeing him ride. And for anybody who has been to the track and seen somebody and go, gosh, there's no way somebody could be faster. That would be who you would see, or what your thoughts would be when you're watching Tom on the track. I always used to refer to Tom as poetry in motion. Now, Tom, I'm going to share with the listeners something that you may not be aware of, but when we met you and your dad and we were trackside there, I remember we walked over to your van and you were getting geared up so we could get started for the day. And we had a great day at the track. And at the end of that day one of the performance camp, you said, hey, did you go over to Sting's house? I thought you were joking. So Michaela and I, we drive off, we go back to our Airbnb. We come back on the second day, and then at the end of the day, Tom says to Michaela and I, did you guys go hang out with Sting? And I said, hold on. First time you said it, I thought you were joking. Tom and his dad are like, no, you're staying less than 5K from Sting's house. And I'm like, wait a second. If you guys know me at all, I love music. I've been trying to teach myself the guitar, but you guys know I'm stuck in the 80s. I love the old stuff. And Tom's like, no, seriously, you're 5K. He tells me the directions to go there. So the next morning, Michaela and I put our running shoes on and we're going to go find Sting's house. And we actually did. If you go back and you look at our Instagram, you'll see where we took a picture outside of Sting's house. He invited us in. We had tea with him. Well, later that night, we're driving through town and we stop at this roadside pub. We go in and this gentleman introduces himself. They were actually closing. And he said, what are you guys doing here? And I said, well, we're here doing a performance camp. And he's like, oh my goodness, my best friend rides moto. And I said, really? What's his name? He says, it's Tom Armstrong. And so he snaps a picture with Michaela and I and sends it to Tom and says, guess who's here? The long and the short of it is that was the first time that I realized Tom wasn't just a recreational musician. Like, this was legit. And I started picking Tom's brain. Like, what are you doing with music? And Tom, that's where I'd like to kind of pick up today's conversation. And I've said this to you in person, and I hope it doesn't embarrass you, but it's very unique to find somebody who is very, very talented at moto and then has that music ability. I could think of like maybe Josh Hill, Daniel Blair. How did those two come together? Like, when did you realize, obviously you're extremely talented on a motorcycle. When did you start realizing you had the potential of actually not only putting a band together, but correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you get it on, when we first met, you had just gotten your first single onto Spotify? Is that correct?
I think it was like the second one. Yeah. It's interesting because everyone assumes that I was motocross that I got into first. But I actually started drumming when I was six years old. So it was sort of my brother learned how to play guitar, and I was always running around being crazy as a kid. So my dad thought, oh well, we'll get him an instrument or something. So they got me a drum kit. I think for about a year or so, I was self-taught, and then we started getting lessons and things like that, and it just progressed from there. Really, we went from like an entry level of drumming to starting to do grades and stuff in secondary school. And before secondary school, I think I was just what you would class as a hard hitter. You pounded on these things. You're just absolutely trying to create noise, but it's not actual drumming. It's a version of, but a very simplistic version of. And in secondary school, I had a teacher, quite an old man, who was into the old school music. It's not all about hitting the kit; it's about finding the groove, the pocket, jazz music, all this sort of stuff. So he taught me probably the most about drumming through just simplicity is key. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to be flash. The best drummers in the world are the ones that can just keep time. So that was a big thing. And I think we started motocross when I was about 10. And yeah, it put drumming on hold for like a few years. Like motocross, eats away at your life, as like you're away every weekend. You've got to dedicate your time to everything. Yeah, drumming just sort of after motocross sort of ended for me. Drumming just came back to me, and we just me and my friends started this band, and it's got progressed since, really, to be honest.
I want to give you the opportunity for all the listeners. Name of the band, where can they find you right at the beginning of our conversation? So while they're listening to you, they can look you up at the same time.
So it's called Carsec, or Carsec Official on Instagram. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, all of the streaming platforms. And all the streams are greatly appreciated.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that we could do an entire show on, the whole business side of music. I'm mesmerized with, getting a chance to work with some agents, and just how the business side of everybody sees you, the musicians, on the road, grinding it out, writing new stuff. Everybody can't wait for that stage where people are wanting you to come perform, to now you're just you're on the grind. You're going 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and thinking, oh my gosh, you're just rolling in the money. And then realize that there's very few people making money, or everybody's making money except the musicians, is what we always tease. So
yeah. And it is a common misconception that it is all glitz and glamour. The amount of people that I see when I come home, and they're like, oh, I see what you're doing. Everything's amazing. You must be living the dream. It doesn't feel like that all the time. I always put back to one time last year. We'd done Germany, and we had to travel from France to Hamburg, and then Hamburg to Munich. And if anybody knows, that is a seriously big drive. And I think we did like 24 hours total driving of just stints, me, Jack, and Joe. And it was, we got to the show, and we really wanted to put on like the best performance of our lives, but we sort of got on stage, and we were all just there like, oh, like we're so tired. But that's what it is. You gotta be able to get on that stage and perform. That's the key thing.
And where you're going right now is exactly what this podcast is all about, is sharing with the listeners. Like you just said, it's easy to be on the outside looking in, and you guys do a great job on social media. You always include people, whether it's behind the scenes, like the one that you posted just a couple of weeks ago, when you guys are walking out on stage, and it's kind of from your perspective, and they watch you go, and you sit down at your drum set, and you're looking out across a big group of people, right? I don't know how many thousands of people were there, but explain to the listeners what the typical week looks like for you guys on a week that maybe you're not performing. Well, let me ask the question a little bit differently. How do you guys break up your year in regards to, and again, I'm completely layman, right? How do you break up when do you go to write? How do you guys write? Do you write when you're on the road, when you're performing, or do you partition it off where it's all right, we're going to do this period of time of nothing but performing, and then this period of time of nothing but writing and producing? How do you divvy that up?
It's a huge team effort. Joe, our singer, and I would say main songwriter, is very lucky that he gets a little space in the back of his garden where he can just go and he can just play his guitar and just write these songs. And we all chip in with lyrics, throughout a 2-week or month period where we know we need to write a new single. Or, for example, what we're doing now is an EP, which is an extended play. It's about 5 songs, so less than an album, as it's cheaper to make, but not quite an album. But with it being cheaper to make and have 5 songs, we can spend a little bit of money on production, promoting these songs, music videos, all this sort of stuff, merchandise and everything like that. And what usually happens is Joe will come up with these songs, these melodies on the guitar with a riff and things like that, and he'll forward them to me and the boys, and I'll come up with drum beats and ideas. We'll bounce off each other. We'll come up with, this lyric doesn't fit, maybe you should try this lyric I wrote, and stuff like that. And the studio is a really good place. We were in there for the whole week last week, recording this new EP. And, it is, you get in at 8:00, you have your morning coffee, your debrief and things like that, and what's going to happen for the day. Usually you start with drums, and go from there. But, the songs change drastically. You could go in with like a set song being like, this is what I want the song to sound like. And then at the end, it will be completely different, but it will be way better because you've got, the whole band in one room. You've got the 2 producers in there that are good friends, Sam and Tom. They're amazing. They're really good at getting these songs from this level to this level, really. So, it's a long process.
When you talk about having a couple producers, I don't want to make any assumptions, but they probably work with other musicians as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that like you said, like they're a business as well. So when we go in and we want them, they'll have other clients as well. But we do see we've been going to them for probably 3 years now. We do see them as very close people to us as a band because they've helped us so much. This show that you talked about where there's like 10, I think there were like 15,000 people there, and those 2 came to that show in the crowd and were cheering us on in the crowd. It's all about just supporting people, and that's what you need, is just support.
Absolutely. When we come back to the family dynamic a little bit, you mentioned your brother plays the guitar. Is he part of the band?
He's not. He wishes.
Okay. Now, is he still playing at all? Does he still enjoy the jam?
Yeah, he still loves playing. He's a bit older than me. He's 30 now. He's just got married this year. He's living in London. After he left the army, he got a new job in London with his wife, Julia, working for I think a consulting firm. There's a lot of numbers, clever person stuff. I usually stay away from that sort of thing. But he's living at large in London, but he still loves to play. Every time he comes home, he's like, "Oh, I've got this new riff. I've got this new riff. Love to play it with you," and things like that. But yeah, he still plays.
Where does the music come from in the family?
We don't know. It's definitely not my dad, because he has no sense of rhythm. But
by the way, Tom's dad is so cool. He's a unique individual, a no BS kind of guy. So that's not a jab at dad for what Tom just said. It's just, you got to meet cool dad. He's something else.
Yeah, he's a great guy. But yeah, it's I'd like to think my mum, because she played a bit of piano, and she insisted that me, my sister and brother, all learned the piano before any other instruments, so we can all play piano.
Nice.
So I think it sort of come from there, really.
You just brought up something that I feel is almost like a perennial question. you talk to some people who are very successful, whether it's athletics or music or anything else, and there's those two schools of thought, and you just articulated it yourself. Your mom insisted that you guys were going to learn piano. And then let's say 50% of the people take that discipline that they learned, and like you say, all of a sudden it just catches their creativity, and all of a sudden it taps into the new them, and then they go off. They love music. Then there's the people that kind of resent it. Mom made me do it, therefore I don't want anything to do with it. If you were to start a family tomorrow, would you take the path of, yes, they're going to learn music? Or would you go the other path, not insisting that they learn music?
It's hard to say until you're in the moment. I think like I would want the best for my kids. I would want them to be happy doing whatever they feel like they could do. I think my mum didn't do it with like you have to do it, this is like punishment or whatever, it was like, this is a skill that could be useful, and things like that. And it has paid off, although when you're a kid and you're learning these things and you don't want to do it, you want to be out playing football or you want to be out on bikes and things like that, looking back at it, I do see it as like a real benefit and a jump start to my musical career. Especially considering her son, my piano teacher's son was a drummer. So, and he gave me a couple of lessons when I was a kid. So I sort of think about, if I didn't do those piano lessons, I wouldn't have seen what drummers can do, or, what it looks like, or wanted to do it. So I'd like to think I would maybe just like, here's a piano, go play it.
Sure.
Just do your thing, if you like it or whatever, I could show you some things and things like that. I do that, I think.
When our two boys were growing up, we had a rule of thumb, just like any little boy, we used to have MX Unleashed on the Xbox, right? And obviously they like to ride moto and they love to play that game. And so we always had a rule for every minute that they were on the Xbox, and we limited it to 60 minutes per day. They had to play a musical instrument for the same amount of time. So if they played 32 minutes on the Xbox, then and again, not as a punishment, but just the idea that I'm just a firm believer. It's amazing when you give these young kids a new game, doesn't matter what it is, Call of Duty or whatever, how all these different little buttons, and they can decipher where to go when, and that deductive reasoning. I'm not a gamer. I don't understand it. Don't even know how to turn on an Xbox, but I do respect the idea that when you watch a young child completely take apart how to play a game, that involves a lot of your gray matter, your brain. I look at music. I love the fact that it taps into that right side of the brain, the creative side of the brain. But what I love about music is I believe nothing creates discipline like music. That's my biased opinion. But I'm not a musician by any stretch of the imagination. I've got a 6-string guitar, and I'm so thankful for you too, because I used to be able to at least understand the fundamentals of what a chord looked like, but I didn't know what to transition, right? At least now with YouTube, you can watch when they transition. I purchased every music book, how to learn the 6-string guitar in 5 minutes. I bought every book there was. But what I love about music, and I'd love to get your opinion because I've had the privilege of working with you on the athletic side. Obviously, I've spent zero time. I mean, when Michaela and I come over, we're going to some shows. I'm gonna be out there with 12,000 people. I'm gonna be the loudest guy in the crowd. You'll hear me. Yeah. Michaela will be on my shoulders. You won't miss her. But in all fairness, though, I just think what is so powerful about the two disciplines that you did was the amount of that's a redundancy of words, but saying the same thing. You had such incredible dedication to your craft of racing. I love the idea that you started music so young. Would you say that the music cross-germinated into moto at some level, or would you say that it's completely left brain versus right brain?
I think obviously physically motocross is just like you have to be on your A game. You there's no room for error, otherwise it bites you back in the ass. Sure. But I definitely think it comes with how many hours you put into it. You could put so many hours into either drumming or motocross, there will always be somebody better that will be there at the racetrack on a weekend, and you'd think, oh no, they're here, I want to be the fast one today, and all that sort of stuff. Whereas I sort of always had this need. I wanted to always be better than anybody there, and it's the same with music. It's a degree of jealousy. You know, when somebody is better than you get incredibly jealous because you want what they have. And you know, if it would be a motocross track, I'd come back after being beaten by somebody I know, and I just, you know, I'd be like, right, that's it. I'm going for a run. I'm gonna up my press ups. I'm gonna up my fitness game. I'm gonna do everything I can to try and be better than them. And it's the same with bands. You know, when I play on these big stages in front of loads of people, it's empowering and it feels great, and I feel on top of the world and everything. But then when I watch another band bigger, better than us, and I'm watching them on stage, I'm thinking that should be me. You know, I want that, and I need that, and I'm going to do everything I can to get to that point, I think.
How are the other guys in the band? Are they as hyper competitive as you are?
They're not athletes, so they don't have that sort of mindset like I do. They don't have a dad like me.
Again, that's a compliment, by the way, for the listeners. That's a compliment.
You know, I'm very grateful for my dad for teaching me that discipline. You know, if you want something, you've got to go out and get it. But they are, with the band, they are very determined. You know, they want this band to work, you know. And on that, I'm very grateful because, you know, you can put so much effort in as one, but, you know, we're a team, you know, we have to work together. You know, if you fall out on tour or something like that, which has happened, we've all had our little arguments. It's not all sunshines and everything. You know, there are fights and there are disagreements, but it's just how you sort them out and try and be mature with it. I'm a sucker for it. I'll hold my hands up. I've shouted a few times, but you know, we've come back from it, so it's okay.
And just to give the listeners a little bit of context, when I first was introduced to Tom, his dad reached out to me via email, gave a little bit of background, explained what he wanted to do. And then at the very last sentence that he wrote in the email was, "I'm only connecting the dots. The rest is on my son. If he doesn't reach out to you, that's his problem." And his dad never engaged beyond that. Now, his dad was very kind. He said, "I'm 100% behind it, but I'm not going to cattle prod him to do the work. I'm not going to remind him to do the work. And if he's not going to be plugged in, let me know, because I want to save your time and I want to save me money." And I said, "That's my guy right there." All about accountability and responsibility. Tom, you just hit onto something that I think would be very interesting. You talk about the moto being a one man, you're responsible for your success and or failure. How do you navigate the size of your band? How do you navigate, as the old saying goes, there's no I in the word team, right? But yet now you've moved from a solo sport, everything relies on you, to now it's a collective effort. What's been your personal struggles transitioning from a single sport into, let's call it, a multi-person discipline?
I think, you know, like you can say like it's a solo thing, motocross and all that sort of stuff. But I'll put my hands up and say I couldn't have done anything I did in motocross without my dad. There's just no way. You know, without him, I would be nowhere. And as you know, motocross is a very expensive sport, and I was very lucky enough that my dad had the money to help me chase this dream, and you know, and we could enjoy the weekends and stuff like that. But you know, like you say, once you're on the bike, it is sort of you in this machine. And I think that in the band it's fine, because don't get me wrong, it's important to work as a team. I get annoyed when, going back to the arguments that have happened, I get annoyed when people don't pull their weight. You know, if you're finishing your show in the set and you're packing up and you're getting everything done, but then there's somebody out there just, you know, I'm not going to point any names or any fingers or anything like that, but you know, if somebody's just sat on their ass doing nothing, I'm just a bit like, you know, well, come on, you know, we're all here to chip in. And they are good, to be fair. The boys, they've got much better this year. You know, we share the driving. We can. There's 4 of us, but only 3 of us can drive. Because one, Jack, hasn't got his driver's license yet, so we're still waiting on him to get that. But I think it's all important that you chip in, otherwise it's doomed to fail. It's all being able to rely on these people's backs, and they're sort of like brothers, we're so close. Especially this year, we've done a lot together this year, so it's all about just being able to rely on these people.
How many years have you guys been working as a band on the road?
We started the band around maybe 3 and a bit years ago.
Okay.
And then on the road, like fully, I think the last 2 years. This year has been a big year for us. We've done a lot of European shows. We broke Europe, Germany, France, and Belgium were just incredible. Again, the Netherlands is just, every time we go there is just an incredible crowd. So many people, and they're just such nice people. And one thing that I've found with being in this band is I've seen so much more of the world already, which I'm very grateful for. And I think it's important to take the time when you're on the road to go see things, go do things, because it goes so quick when you're on the road. You get there, you're packing up, you're doing the show, you get out and then you're tired, you forget to do things, but it's important to do those things.
Who actually does all the bookings? Like when you mentioned getting into Netherlands and breaking into Europe, who's responsible for getting those booked?
So all go to our agent and our managing team, and then what they'll do is they'll get if they get an offer and things like that, they'll forward the offer to us, to our band email. We'll look, see if it's worthy of us doing it and things, because nobody wants to drive all the way to wherever we're going just to get paid, 500 quid. It's just not worth it.
Certainly.
So they'll send offers, and then if they think that it's a bad offer, our management will go back and maybe try and get us a better offer or deal. And that's the best thing to do.
That makes sense. When we come back to the motocross transition into music full time, what was the final piece? What was the final action? What was the final chapter that you said, okay, I'm going to put a period at the end of the sentence of racing? Like you said, the music kind of came back a little bit later, but what was it that closed your motorcycle career?
There were two things. One was one of my friends passed away in motocross, Jude Morris. His passing was a big hit, especially to me and my dad. It was a bit of a, like, you're not invincible sort of moment. You have to, it was a big hit, and we said that we were going to sort of slow racing down, because we didn't want to really go into that anymore. I think Dad had a big worry at that moment, as did I. And then we tried to do a few races and just do it for fun, and it was just a big anxiety thing. The pressure was such a mind, it just blew my mind. I get to race days and I could just not handle with this pressure of, wanting to compete, but it wasn't that I wanted to. I felt like in the end it was like I needed to, and when you're like that, that's where crashes happened. And I unfortunately had a few crashes that year. I was very fit. I felt very, very fit going into that season, but if your mind's not in it, it affects you massively. And I had 3 very big crashes and 2 very bad concussions, which caused me to just say speak to my old man. We had to sit down, and we both agreed that, that it wasn't what we wanted it anymore.
Where were you at when you knew you needed to go have to talk to Dad, that we need to put closure on this? Where were you at personally?
I was in a very low point, I think, because I felt like this dream was slipping away. Something that I've been putting, my body through, everything for so many years, and getting to this point and being that good, and then just being like, okay, I'm done. It was hard, and the first few months after that were just so boring. Like, I remember just sitting at home and thinking, what am I doing with my weekends? I can't go out. Never been a big going out and party, and I tried to make more time with things that I'd missed out on. I went and socialized more with my friends, people that I'd worked with, and stuff like that, which is important. I think if you surround yourself with people that are good in your life, definitely helped me. My girlfriend was very good, it's all things that add to it.
Were you afraid to talk to dad, or were you not the least bit trepidatious speaking with dad that you wanted to put closure on this?
No, I was terrified. It was Dad was a very strong individual, very, very determined. It wasn't just me that wanted to win, it was him. Like I said, going back to the team thing, we both wanted it, and all he wanted was the best for me. And but he was great. I remember speaking to him about it, and I had no reason to be terrified or worried to talk to him about it, because he was just, that's absolutely fine. He was just like, we can just, if we just do it for fun or whatever, it's not the end of the world. He says, I get more, just as the same amount of enjoyment as watching you on stage perform in the band as I do with you when you were racing. It's the same thing. And he said, you don't get hurt on stage.
Yeah. How many shows have mom and dad been able to come to? Because you guys have been traveling all over the place.
Yeah, they've come to quite a few. I was very lucky to get, I invited mum and dad we played a festival, big festival this year, called Truck Festival, and I invited them both. I got them both backstage passes, to come backstage with us. But unfortunately, mum had work, so I think dad landed that morning from America and then drove to the festival. Still had his travel bag on that he'd been traveling with. Came right down to the backstage, and we had a couple beers, and then we had our time on the main stage, and he was stood side stage watching it. And I remember just looking over and seeing his face at this massive crowd of like 15,000 people, and he was just like, that was incredible, and that was brilliant. That was really fulfilling for me.
It's your version of an MXGP at Lommel for you and dad, right?
Yeah, I definitely say it was a big moment.
Would you say that was the moment that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like that was when the transition, when you knew that you'd arrived in the music world?
No, I think I'd had a few moments before then when I was just like, this is what I want. I like this feeling. We played the same festival the previous year, on a slightly smaller stage, but it was in a really big tent. And I think the capacity was only like 7,000, and there were like 7,000 people in the tent. And we had just, we just released our EP, and, these amount of people turned up, all screaming the lyrics back at us, going crazy in the crowd. And I remember we had this big backdrop behind me on the stage that said Carsick on it in like big lights. And I remember just looking behind me, seeing that, and then looking at the crowd and thinking, wow, this is incredible. I think, this is going where I want it to go.
Yeah, let's back the train up just a little bit, because there's an overlap. Obviously, started with the piano, went into some drum lessons, kind of parked the drum set for a little bit. Racing takes off. Obviously, you go straight to the top with a lot of sweat equity, a lot of discipline. You put a closure on that. When did you decide to transition back into the music? Was it just to pick it up as a hobby, or was it like, all right, I'm going to fill this void with music now?
No, it wasn't that. I'd always played, I always have my drum kit at home. I was always playing and things like that. It wasn't like I stopped. And obviously I went to college, studied music at college, and that's where I met a lot of the band members now, Jack and Joe. And then I met the other member, Jack, because he's Joe's brother. So I remember going back to their house one night, and Jack was there, and we basically started Carsick at college. And it was, I think, a year into Carsick sort of being a thing that we motocross then sort of dipped off. And then I said to Dad, well, I might as well just really push this band now with all the time I've got. And that's where we got to, really.
And when you go back to that night when three or four of you were in the house there and you realized car sick was going to be a real deal, what would that conversation look like? Is it just, did you have the epiphany? Who had the epiphany? Like, hey, wait a second, let's just put glue on all this and make it stick and take off with it.
No, it wasn't like that at all. It was we were just sort of sat there and it was just joking around. We had no idea it was going to be where it is now. We just thought, well, we've got some good tunes. Let's release them. Let's have some fun with it. And I had to take a small step away from the band due to the concussion. So when I came back, it was sort of like full steam ahead. We got to make this the next big thing, because we sort of realized we were getting a fan base, we were getting a good following, and it was just push on to that, really.
Where'd the band name come from?
The band name came from Joe and Jack. They were the brothers. They were in another band before, while we were both at college, and they'd written a song for that band that was called Carsick. And Joe, when we were talking about it at college, he was just like, well, what about the name for the band Carsick? And at first we were all like, yeah, sure, we needed a name, that'll do. But now we look back at it and we're like, it's quite a cool name, But when everyone asks us, they always expect like a really cool story, but it's really not that exciting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not. Maybe one of our listeners will put something in the comments below, but I had heard the group REM, they're out of a small college in Georgia. And I heard that they got a chance to play on the college and they had like one day to promote that they were going to do it. And this is back in the day where you'd have you had the little needle pins that was a circular.
Yeah.
And they're like, we got to promote it. What are we going to call ourselves? And they said it was REM because it fit on a little circle that they could put on shirts and they could hand them out. And everyone was like, REM, REM. Now, again, I've heard that several times. I don't know if it's true. I haven't talked to Mike Stipe about it. I say that totally tongue in cheek because my wife, Michaela, actually went to the University of Georgia and she would be there in Athens. And it would be nothing for REM just to walk in and start playing. But that was when they were doing Fables of Reconstruction. They were not the band that they are known for today. So that kind of stuff I still think is fascinating. When Michaela and I, ironically, Tom, we were at Loretta's and we always stayed in Airbnb in an area that's about 45 minutes outside of Loretta's. Because as you can imagine, Michaela doesn't want to stay on the property for 7 days of racing, hearing nothing but motors from sunrise to sunset. And we were in Leaper's Fork and there was a band there doing a Tom Petty cover. And Tom Petty went to the University of Florida. That's where my son lives. And so I've always been a Tom Petty fan. And that song that he did with Stevie Nicks, Don't Come Around Here, for whatever the name of the song is, I can't remember it right now. And as they get ready to play, it's the last song of the night. And he says, well, I think we've got somebody here that can help us do it. And Carrie Underwood was in the back listening. She was there all night long. So she comes waltzing up and she gets up there and starts belting it out. And then Keith Urban lives in the same city. So Keith Urban's there. And it's just really a cool, they're human beings is what you realize. And, they're people who love to play music. And we live in a small little city outside of Orlando. And there's a country bar here, and it's nothing for Jason Aldean, Toby Keith, when he was alive, to just show up on a Saturday night and just play. And I just love that because they never lost the roots. I don't know if you're aware. Do you remember the group Florida Georgia Line, the country group?
No, I don't think I do know.
So the lead singer of that group, Tyler Hubbard, he's a huge moto guy. And Florida Georgia Line is split up. And no, he's a big fan of moto, loves moto. And but it's just what you realize is the world's a pretty small place. Like you said, you've seen a lot of it. You've had some really, really good experiences. What would be a dark stage of car six development that most people would not be aware of? We heard about your injuries and your concussions on the moto side, obviously to the point that it ended your career. What would be some of the dark things or a dark situation that may have or could have maybe even put car sick off the map as we know it today?
Ooh, big question. There's nothing really that's been like terrible. I I'd say a big thing for a lot of bands that have struggled with it, and what we could struggle with sometimes, is alcohol is a big factor. I myself am not a huge drinker. Um, some of the boys in the band can drink very well. I always find myself chasing them, but it's is a catalyst for a it ending badly. If we're drinking before a show, or we're doing the show and somebody's getting really drunk, and then after the show they're getting very drunk, that's when arguments happen. That's when it gets a bit aggressive, and you have to shut it down. And I won't point any fingers, but a couple of fights have happened, but been sorted. But if it got too far, that could have been a big, been like, okay, this cannot happen in the band. We won't stand for it. You're just going to ruin it for us. It's not going to be fun. You got to think, you have to sit in this van with people for, like, I don't know, if you're on a big tour for, I think our big tour we did in the UK headline tour, we were out for pretty much a whole month. We were on the road, just from show to show, staying in places, accommodation, sleeping in the van, sleeping with friends, all this sort of stuff. You fall out, like, let's say third show in, it's a long, long month to spend in a van with people that you don't get on with. So it's important to just talk it out and just deal with it. And if you're drunk, just don't talk, and then talk in the morning, because it's just bad.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you come back to the band REM, when the drummer came down with brain cancer, Bill, and Michael Stipe always said that if Bill wasn't going to be part of the band, then REM wouldn't be a band. Do you guys, I know you're very young in your career, but is that kind of the relationship that you guys have already at this point in your career?
Sorry, you cut up a bit then. What did you say about REM?
Yeah, so the drummer for REM, unfortunately, Bill, he came down with a brain tumor, and he decided to take himself off the road, took himself out of the band, and Michael Stipe refused to record any more music after that, because he said the band is the band. And with you guys being so young like that, if you guys were to have one of those disagreements where, all heck broke loose, would you guys just give it a little bit of time and come back together? Do you think it would completely dismantle itself? And I know you're very young in your career, but how would you guys address something like that?
I think, although we're very young, we're all very mature. We aren't able to just talk it out and sort it. Joe and Jack are brothers. Brothers fight. I fought with my brother. It happens. It's just about sorting it out, and they are very good at just sorting themselves out. You just got to leave them to it. It's for example, I remember one night we just played in Manchester for a show, and it was my stint to drive home after the show, and I was like, okay, I'm driving. Joe was sitting in the front with me, and Jack was in the back. And we actually had a fill-in bassist, because our bassist was unfortunately but unavailable that day. So we had a fill-in, one of our friends. And I remember Joe and Jack just started bickering just a little bit. It wasn't bad. It was just little bickers. And then what was a bicker, because they'd been drinking, had progressed into something more. And then they were just like shouting at each other. And I think it was like 1 a.m, and I was just driving, and I was just thinking to myself, this is terrible. I'm trying to just like enjoy this drive home and just get home safely. And they're just, shouting at each other. And this fill-in bassist, our friend Lloyd, was just sat there silent, just like, what is going on? And then, went quiet for a bit. And Jack just like tapped him on the shoulder and was just like, it's all love, mate. We're brothers. It's all good. And then they're just back to normal like that. It was just sorted like that, just by that small thing. But yeah, it's ridiculous.
No, it's amazing what a little bit of silence will do to kind of calm the nerves for everybody. What is Tom's philosophy on success? How do you describe success in your terms?
It in band, in motocross, or in life?
Just in life in general, because you've got a beautiful girlfriend, incredible athletic career as a racer, as an athlete, obviously multi-talented, music unbelievable. Anytime I can see any video of you playing, it's always mesmerizing. What is your definition of success with everything that you've been through? I hate to say this, but you're extremely young, but you have a tremendous amount of experience under your belt athletically. You've been on some of the biggest platforms as an athlete, and 15,000. I don't know many people that are listening to this can say that they've ever done something in front of 15,000 people all at one time for however long your set is. Let's just say it's an hour. That's a long time to perform, right? If you have to go out and give a 3-minute speech, yeah, it sucks. But to perform with other people, what is your definition of success in your terms?
It's such a big question, because it could come from the smallest of things. I think like you said, I've got a very beautiful girlfriend. I'm very lucky with Tamsin. She's good to me. I have a loving family, who I cherish very much. And that alone is, six. I could be very happy with that. I'm just a little bit greedy. I want the band to succeed. I want that lifestyle. I want to be able to get up on stage, perform, show people that I am putting the effort in. If I'm not coming off that stage sweating, I haven't put enough effort in. That's what I want to be able to do, and I want people to. I like seeing people sing our songs back to us. It's such a fulfilling. I think Liam Gallagher said once actually that, there's nothing like looking out at a crowd of people just completely like loving what you're doing. Like it's a show. They're just loving everything you're doing. And he said it is such a empowering feeling. And he's so right, it's some, bad as it sounds sometimes, being like, I want these people to enjoy it. It is just incredible. And if you are doing hour-long sets, I think I go back to that first tour that we did where we were away for a whole month. You get on stage, you do the same set, you pack down, you pack the van, you do the same thing the next day. It's the same thing through and through. And it is very repetitive, but every time I got on that stage, it was the same. I just was big smile on my face, just wanting to do this.
Do you ever get nervous going out on stage like you did rolling your bike into the gate?
Oh yeah. When we did that festival at Truck Festival, when there were so many people out there, I was very close to throwing up before we went out. Completely different to motocross. There was, like you said, as soon as you put that helmet on and the goggles, you sort of have a shield. It always felt like I was just secluded. Then it was like, okay, this is it. This is go time. Whereas, I have full vision of 15,000 people wanting me to do well. And if I make a mistake, they all see it. Exactly. And it's sort of, you got to go up there and just breathe and just do it. And Jack, actually, he had a rough time last year. We did that tent when there were 7,000 people, and for us then that was huge. And sure, we were like, wow, it's the big turning point. And it was all being recorded and everything. And I think like third song in, one of the most energetic songs we have, and Jack trips over his cable and he falls face first on the stage. And I've never seen him get up fast in my life, but I witnessed the whole thing. Obviously he was smiling, I was hysterically laughing behind the drum kit. We were all, but you just got to laugh it off. And he came off that stage with a big smile on his face, being like, I put everything I can into that. He's like, I don't care about that fall, it doesn't matter.
Perfect. No, that's great. When you look at the idea of being defined as being nervous, you kind of teased a little bit about, screwing up. Is that your biggest concern? Is it like, what would be the fears of a drummer with 15,000 people? Because we can't even, for everybody that's listening, I think less than 1% of people could ever say that they could empathize. They can't say that they've been where you've been. So where would the nerves come from? What would be your biggest concern?
As a drummer, it is going out of time.
Okay.
If it is the drummer's responsibility to keep that band together. You have to keep that band as a group. If you go out of time, they'll go out of time. They'll go out of time. It's just you have to be the solid. Like, I'm not even bigging myself up. Like, this is just what you have to do. Like, if I can't keep the boys in time and where they need to be, or if they get lost, they should be able to come to me and be like, okay, this is what's going to happen next, which is what happens all the time.
Yeah.
And a big thing for me is don't go out of time. If I go out of time, it looks bad on me. And that's a pressure I put on myself a lot, I think.
This is not for anybody in the band to answer but you. What is your definition of success as a musician? I think you're aware Michaela is a professional painter. She grew up in a painter family, and I'm always mesmerized, even on how to butter toast, how different she and I do the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I never saw it so much until Michaela and I got married, like how different a creative person thinks. Than I'm about as left brain logical as they come, right? I mean, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
non-creative I am.
Yeah.
And it's always fascinating to me when I get around successful artists. We have a very large art collection, and it's amazing because you talk to them and they just truly think differently.
Oh yeah.
What is your definition of success? Because you've got that athletic left brain guy, you've got that incredibly creative musical guy. What is your definition of success? Not the band's, but Tom's.
It's again a huge question of what I want and what is enough. The main thing I can think of straight away is, for me, success would be being able to have a career in this and to provide for my family in the future. That is like success for me. If I can, do my part and provide, I'll be happy. Of course I want to be, the biggest band in the world, it's the dream, but if I can get where I need to go and, get paid and do it for a living, for me, that's success. And have, my family and my girlfriend by my side, that is success. And going on what you touched on the, every drummer is different. We all do things very differently. I'm a more practical, drummer, but I know people that can't drum unless they have a piece of music in front of them. They have to physically see it to be able to play it, which blows my mind. I remember seeing one person when I was learn like that, and I was just like, that's crazy to me. Like, because I'd always say, I'd be like, oh, if you play it, I can play it.
Sure.
I could listen to it and I can watch it, and I'd be like, okay, so you're doing this, and then I'd just get it. But I remember my teacher in secondary school always used to say, no, I'm not going to play it for you, because then you'll just be able to play it. So he's just like, I want you to read it. So it's all about learning the different ways of how the other drummers do things, I think, and adapting it to your own. Because I had to learn, because I was just a bog standard drummer. I had my drum kit set up and I was good. And then when we started Carsick, we wanted to implement electronic sounds and different ideas into it. So I bought a sample pad, which is a bit of technology which allows me to cut up pieces of music or clips or videos that I've taken, and I can play it through this pad and sounds and things like that and play along with it. And that was a big learning curve for me. I had to just sit down with this thing for like a week and just learn it, because it was so much tech in it.
How much of that would you go back to that first teacher that you had that said, you've got to get into the pocket, is the way you referred to it? You got to get into, do you feel that what you just articulated goes all the way back to that at some level?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think as a drummer, and my dad will always say it, you could be the flashiest guy, you could do the coolest fills, the stick tricks, everything like that. But if you can't keep time, then you're not a drummer. If you can just keep in that pocket of, keeping everybody in time, you sound great, the band sounds great, you're not too loud, you're not showing off, you're not trying to make yourself the center of attention. That is a good drummer. That's somebody who can just keep the band alive and just progressing throughout the song, throughout the set. There's a time and place for the flashy bits, and you having your little moment. Like in our sets, at the end, I have a drum solo which we put in. So after a song finishes, I'll go straight into my solo, and I'll do like a little 5-minute thing, and then we finish and go straight into another song. And that gives me my little bit of my moment, I guess.
That's awesome. Is there a band that you, as a musician, have really gravitated towards and studied and watched through your career?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to a lot of music because of my parents. They love that sort of music. But I study a lot of, I wouldn't say study, I watch a lot of bands on how they do things and what I could, not copy, but, try and make my own version of, or things like that. And there's an upcoming band that have sort of progressed a lot the last year, more so than I've called Wonder Horse, a UK band. And, I watch how they do things, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. This is really cool. This is really cool. I take a lot of inspiration from them for sure.
One of the bands, and I'm going to probably sound like my age, I'm going to show my age here, right, at 56. One of the bands that's really caught my attention over the last 10 years has been Coldplay. And I remember, don't remember how I came across the information, but they said Coldplay got to a point where they're guaranteed $1 million per show. When you look at, and I do appreciate you allowing me to ask you the question for a second time, what is your definition of success? Because I think for the listeners of this show, I'm very big on the why. Why do we get out of bed in the morning? You and I used to talk about it as an athlete. Like, what's the rewards? You can put in the sweat equity, but what is your reward system? When you were 5, it was peanut M&Ms. When you were 7, it was your BMX bike. By the time, and as you get older, your currency and your reward system changes a little bit. That's why I appreciate you elaborating, because the listeners really thrive on the idea of what makes someone successful, motivated. And this is something that I hear from a lot of the DMs and a lot of the emails I get. Hey, thanks for the show with Alec Rikosoyev or Big E at Yoshimura. I never really thought about success that way, or I didn't realize he had to overcome so much to get to where he's at. And as we always say, it's the 30-year overnight success that people just don't understand. When you look at a band like Coldplay, or I'm using Coldplay, that may not even be somebody you're interested in, but when you look at the idea, is it being able to provide for your family? Does that come from having a certain amount of money? Is it a certain amount of prestige? Is it having a certain amount of shows? Is it having, I'm going to show my age here, right? When we just go to the store and buy albums and CDs, right? I know you don't do that anymore, but when you look at the idea of Coldplay being guaranteed $1 million, in your opinion, looking at how far you've come in 3 years, which you guys have come incredibly far, how much further do you still have to go to have that? Like, I like the way you said, be the biggest band. I love that ambitious comment. Absolutely love it. But I'm not surprised coming from you as a product of your dad either. Your dad always shoots for the moon. So from your perspective, what do you think is it going to take for you as a drummer, and then collectively as a band, to become the biggest? What's it going to take? Besides a lot of luck. Time.
Time is a big thing, having, family, girlfriends and support, to know that, we need to do this to make it. I don't judge success on the amount of money I make. For me, I'll judge success if I finish a show and I'm happy with it. If I can come off that stage being like, okay, we absolutely killed that. That was great. That's successful. But to get to that stage, Coldplay, I remember when I watched the documentary on them, when they were tiny and they released a few songs, and then, next thing, now they're headlining Glastonbury, they're headlining all over the world. and they're a huge, huge band. To get to that point, it will just take time, luck, good songs. You want songs that people can relate to, can enjoy, and you write a catchy song, you just got to get it produced well, and you're winning, really.
I remember Michael Stipe said he got to a point where he could sit down in one afternoon and he could write a song that he knew would be a radio hit because he said he figured out the formula. And you go back to that documentary you were talking about with Coldplay. Remember when he was walking on the beach and they were saying he kind of had that geeky appearance to him, but yet he had this level of intrigue and the lyrics were deep. The music was good. And that becomes the song that ends up setting him off the stratosphere.
Yep.
Have you guys had songs that are based more out of personal experiences or just you guys sitting down? I know you said you've got the one gentleman in the band that predominantly starts and then you guys start massaging them collectively. Where do most of those foundational lyrics come from? Is it just being a lyricist or is it a mixture of experiences? Because you guys are all very young at this point.
It's a good question. The songs are mainly about our lives, experiences we've had. We have a song called Is What It Is. It's our first ever single that we released, and that is predominantly about a night out. We went to a pub, we'd had a few drinks and things, and we were just walking through our hometown city, Salisbury, and a series of events happened, and I remember Joe being like, we should write a song about this, and I remember him writing a song about it. He was like, listen, I've got this, and that was the start of that song, and it's our most listened to track today, still the first ever one we released, and it's still the top one. It was just crazy, but it is just about a night out and aggressive drinking culture, just people just being horrible people, and that's the lyric, is what it is. You just got to get on with it.
Do you think Is What It Is will be your Elton John's Rocket Man or Billy Joel's Piano Man?
No, I wouldn't say that. I can't. I always think about it and just think, oh God, what would my mum think if she heard this song? The amount of swearing in it, or what's going on a night out. But it is still very cool hearing people sing the chorus because it's so easy just to sing it. So that's what I like.
Of the songs that you've put out, is that the one that is, for lack of better terminology, the most popular one right now? What would be your most popular song when you guys are out performing in front of 15,000 people?
I'd say it'd be that one or Anaconda Frank. We have a track called Anaconda Frank, which is about a friend of ours who, he's we met him on a random night out, just a random guy, and he just had a pet snake with him on the night out, and we just wrote a song about it, and it's quite an energetic, aggressive song, but everybody seems to love that song, and they're always like, "What's with the name?" And we're like, we tell them, and they're like, "There's no way that's why," and it's,
I think it's for somebody like myself that's a consumer of music, I think the naming of songs is always fascinating. And then you've got these online experts that like to do the interpretation of where it came from, and they never talk to the band members who actually wrote it to ask them where it came from. Like Elton John, Someone Say My Life Tonight, or Benny and the Jets, or, there's so many different controversies over what Benny and the Jets is actually about. And I'm like, why don't you just ask Bernie Taupin who actually wrote it? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, do you have time for our what we call the rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, first and foremost, before we get into them, I just want to say, Tom, thank you very much. I know the listeners are going to really enjoy this. I hope you'll have time in your schedule. We can get you to come back and share some more stories of you guys being on the road and some more success. So really appreciate it. The first question that I always ask everybody is, who's the most, in your opinion, all political correctness aside, who is the most influential or powerful person in your phone, in your opinion, right now?
Right now?
Right now.
My dad.
Fair enough. Who would you, and who would you like to have in your phone that you don't currently have? And don't worry about political correctness. Our group does not care about that.
actor called Nick Frost. He's done some great films with Simon Pegg. Very British films. Hot Fuzz, Dawn of the Dead. Really comedy films. But I'd like to, if not, just go for a beer with him because he's just seems like an all round great bloke.
What would be the first question you would ask him?
When's the next movie coming out?
What would be your second?
Ooh. Which one of the movies is your favorite?
Which of his movies are your favorite?
Hot Fuzz, I think.
And why is that?
It's hilarious. I think it's a very British film. I remember my brother one night, his Italian wife, Julia, had come over for like the first weekend meeting us, the whole family. And he put this film on and we were in hysterics laughing at the film, but she had no idea what was going on because it's such a British, the humor is so cultured to like us. She gets it a lot more now, but I remember us laughing and she was looking around at us like, why are we laughing? Like, what's so funny? You know?
Yeah, like, what am I missing, huh?
Yeah.
I love that.
It's a great film.
No, that makes plenty of sense. If I gave you $100,000 to start a new business, what would it be?
It would be my own drumming school.
Very cool.
I'd promote my own drumming career, you know, teach kids how to drum and do little videos, YouTube, things like that. It's something I'd quite like to do, I think.
That's very, very cool. Do you consider yourself a morning person or an evening person before you became a full-time musician? Obviously dictates your career now.
I always I have always and will always be a morning person. I think that's been implemented into me through my dad from when he was in the army, and then motocross, getting up early, you know, getting this fitness done and all that sort of stuff. It's just sort of stuck. You know,
Yep.
I like to get up and just get on with the day, but I tend to crash in the evening.
So how in the world do you keep yourself awake when you've got to do a show at 9 o'clock at night?
Oh, coffee. A lot of coffee.
A lot of coffee.
A lot of coffee. Coffee, Red Bull, you know, just getting on with it, I guess. You just got to. That's the only issue with being on the road is your day-to-day routine just goes out the door. You know, you could do a show where you're on at. I think we did a show actually in the Netherlands where we were on at midnight because they stay up so late, and we travelled the whole day just to get to this amazing venue. It was a boat, massive boat, and it was a huge stage underneath the boat at the bottom level. And we played it, and it was a great show, and I could feel just the amount of people that were on the boat was just hitting this. But after the show, we just crashed, and I was just like, you know, everyone wanted to go out and see the city, but we were just so tired we couldn't do it. But yeah, routine is just out the door.
You probably remember you remember Ricky Carmichael and Carrie Hart having the RCH team.
Yeah.
And Carrie says every time Pink is performing, he's downstairs doing a rower workout. Him and his daughters will work, you know, they'll work out together. They'll read together. They'll do schoolwork. So while mom's jamming upstairs, there's Carrie downstairs getting a workout in. And then when she comes off the stage, she goes right into mom mode, you know, and they go finish dinner and they do whatever they're going to do. And it's, for those of you who haven't listened to Carrie Hart on Gypsy Tales, I'd highly recommend it. It's great insight. To your point exactly, is trying to establish a routine when the only constant is change is very, very difficult. So I respect that. A last quick question for you. If you were to describe yourself as an animal, what animal are you?
Oh God. That's one animal. That's such a hard question. There's so many. I'd like to think like a honey badger or something like that. I like to think that I can be quick and aggressive where I need to be in like songs or if I'm in motocross, but also I just want to get on with my life and just, you know, I have a goal in the day and they have a goal in the day to just like get their food, provide for their family and stuff. But, you know, they're not going to take any bullshit along the way.
What animal would you say you're the furthest from?
like a snake, I think, snake or some sort of reptile. I'm not a huge fan on water, but also at the same time, I just I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't associate myself with that kind of creature.
That's cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, man, on behalf of everybody here at the Coach Robb Podcast Network, I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Meet the Guest is always about giving our listeners some insight as to how success is created. We say success isn't guaranteed, but it's not accidental. And I just, I'm going to sound like a father here, but I'm so proud of what you've done, man. And I'm glad to call you a friend and to see your journey. I love it. I never got a chance to meet your mom. I hope I'll get a chance to meet her and your brother and sister sometime soon, but keep up the good work, man. And on behalf of everybody here, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Robert. It'd be great to see you in the new year as well.
You bet. Take care.